uh, I'll be explaining the code. So this is dynamic navigation generated from a JSON file. Okay, when I remove this and hit save, this should be removed. And when I change some text, right? So test for the second element child, this should become test when I hit save, and so on for the grandchildren as well. To do this, you might need the CSS files. You can find the CSS from my repo, link in description. In app.js, we import the JSON file and pass it to the component. So here we receive the data that we passed from app.js, we destructure it, and we pass it inside our return statement. So this JSON data is an array. We loop over the array and generate these menu items. In our first condition, we return an li element if it doesn't have any children. Okay, so here link 4 doesn't have any children. Okay, link 4 and link 1 doesn't have any children. So in this condition, link 1 and link 4 are returned. For the elements with children, this is executed. This div is responsible for rendering this, and this box here. When I remove this and save, it should disappear. All these elements are inside an li tag, this li tag. And all these elements from 1, 2, 3, 4 are inside a ul tag. Okay, this ul tag. Inside motion ul, we have li tag for each submenu 1, 2, 3, 4. So this li tag. So here if I string, right, all the elements should be this. Okay, like if it doesn't have children, then return this li tag. So here it is returned. Okay, this, these element doesn't have any children, so they are returned by this condition. If any of these element have children, then this return statement is executed. This is executed if any of these element has children, right? So here this div is responsible. This div is responsible for rendering this part. Make this a string and hit save. This should become this dot string. Okay. And for these elements, we use a ul tag. This ul tag. So inside this ul, we have an li tag. Okay. So all these elements are inside the li tag. Each has their own separate li tag, right? So when I make this a string and hit save, text should be changed here. Okay. That's all. This was the rendering part. And now we have to go to the conditionally rendering part. So all this code, right? This is the conditional rendering part. Here, here. So this is all conditional rendering part. To conditionally render, we use state. So we define our initial state. So this state is the state for the whole menu. Okay, we have this state and we have two functions. So mouse enter and mouse leave function. And for conditional rendering to work, okay, we need a unique ID for each element. So all these IDs are unique. For these elements to render, we do not need any condition. So we just return this and return this. But for the elements inside this, we render on a condition. The condition is only when the mouse enters this li tag. So the conditional rendering starts from here. When the mouse enter this li tag, we want a function to run. Okay, when the mouse leaves this li tag, okay, we want another function to run. So inside the on mouse enter function, we get the ID, okay, ID of the element which is rendered. Okay, so each element has their own ID. We pass their ID inside this function, and we set the state as true for that ID that we just received. So inside the mouse enter function, we use the state setting function. Here we preserve the previous state and update the current state for the ID, and we return the updated state. Okay, if we some people might say we don't need this, so we need this because we have grandchildren. So watch what happens when I do this. Okay, when I mouse enter this, when I enter the sixth element, everything should be closed. Okay, because the previous state is not preserved, right? That's why it closes. So that's why we do this. We preserve the previous state and we preserve the new state also. Same in the mouse leave handler. And instead of true, we do false for the ID. Okay. So here these two functions are used. Same for the grandchildren as well. For the children, for these elements also, we use the same mouse enter and mouse leave functions. So after writing these functions for the elements which has children, what we do is we take this state and we place it here. So this element here has an ID, right? So we use this ID to make it true and false. Okay. So here we use the same ID to conditionally render. So this same ID is used here inside. We check inside our state for this ID whether if it's true or false. If it's true, then this will run. If it's false, then it will terminate. It will not run. And same for the grandchildren as well. So here we use ELE right? And here we use the same ELE. So this will check inside if it is true or false. If it is true, then it will render. If it is false, then it will not render. And just by doing this, our code would work fine. But we would not have any animation for this, right? So if I remove this motion UL, okay, I remove this motion UL, the code would work fine. So here, our code would work fine, but we don't see any animation. We use the motion UL only for the animation. That is it. Yeah, we use the motion UL for the animations. That's all, guys. So this is basically we use the same state for open and closed. This is not my class or anything. This is what motion UL provides. So this variants we pass it inside this. This is the variant for basic animation, like yeah, some basic animation.